open and to say these are the decisions that we are making. These are the basis upon which and the assumptions upon which we're making these decisions. It's not always popular, and I think people assume sometimes that leaders have a magic,
Right.
8 ball, the crystal
They
ball
just
to know
know.
when is this going to happen? When is it? How long is this for? And there was a time when I said, well, for the next few months. And now we realize that the pandemic is lasting way longer than any of us thought. So it means that we are making decisions for the long term and expecting that this will last in some shape or form longer than we anticipate. And so that's what
Right.
we realized as a leadership team several months back. And so it's really helped us to plan ahead. But those decisions have been hard. Those decisions are
Yeah.
decisions that have kept me and others up at night. And it takes courage to lead, and one has to do it with authenticity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh man, I just think you're amazing. When I think about GCC in the larger ecosystem of higher education in the Valley, which we really pride ourselves on, and all three counties, I think Hampshire County gets a lot of attention for, the higher ed institutions that are there, but all three counties have amazing institutions that are addressing education and addressing a lot of the inequities. And I'm so curious when it comes to sort of community college and all of the stigma that's associated with that and the sort of separation. But here you are leading your school in totally radical ways, new ways, with amazing team members who I've had the pleasure to work with in a few different capacities. Um, how do you see, when we talk about things like equity, what does equity mean when it comes to talking about how community college is valued alongside other forms of higher education? Because it feels a little bit like community college is an environment whose time has come to a certain extent. More students are choosing to go to community colleges, if not for all 4 years, often for the first 2 years. How do you see community colleges being sort of elevated and respected in the way, honestly, that they should be?
Hannah, I think you definitely hit it at the nail on the head. Our time has come, and the public more and more is realizing that, and we see that in the increasing numbers of dual enrolled students that we have, parents who are saying, and students also saying, I want to be financially savvy about the decision that I'm making.
Yes.
People are realizing that they need to have an advanced degree for this economy. Most people
Right.
do. We also offer training that is not that does not lead to a degree, career and technical education. We offer that, but increasingly people are seeing community colleges as a pathway to transfer to a 4-year institution and to also control their debt. And at Greenfield Community College at GCC, we have a stellar reputation around the academics and the excellence that we offer in terms of student services.
Yeah.
We're very small schools, so that caring, the relationship building, the social capital that students gain, they know that there is a GCC difference, which is why we have students who travel from other states like Vermont and New
Right.
Hampshire to come to GCC. So they understand the GCC difference, and they also understand the value in keeping their total education debt down. Now, a student who uses mass transfer, for instance, they can achieve a bachelor's degree for under $30,000, very close, but under $30,000 that you can do that. When you look at, on average in Massachusetts, people are paying $30,000 to $40,000 for just the 1 year, one of the 4 years of the undergraduate degree. So there is a price difference. The state has made it so that students are able to transfer. We have some wonderful partnerships with our local 4-year universities. UMass has been a
Yeah.
stellar partner. We also have Elms College that's been a wonderful partner. We have MCLA that's been a great partner. We have Westfield State that's been a wonderful partner. So locally, we have some great partners where our students are going that have also made it financially viable for our students to transfer to their institutions, and recognizing that many will go for an advanced degree, right? They'll
Right.
go for that master's degree to allow them to have continued mobility, career mobility, upward career mobility, and a master's degree is expensive. So I think the world is changing. And given also our relationship with businesses, people understand that in terms of experiential learning, studying at a community college, you get that value. Our career services, we
Yeah.
just made the commitment to ensure that every single graduate of GCC will have a professional experience on their resume by the time they graduate. So if you
Wow.
want it, exactly, we've brokered those relationships with employers to ensure that our students can take advantage of them, can take advantage of a range of experiential learning opportunities. So the world is changing
Yes.
and we need to change with it. And consumers are certainly getting the value that they need by starting at a community college like GCC.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that commitment, I think, is so important and really speaks to that intersection of where our culture is going, that, for so long it was enough to have a degree, but then I think with the job market shift, that professional entry point became so much more important. And it's really interesting. I've had an opportunity to work with your team on some sort of early advisory around the formation of the Rural Innovation Center. I hope it's okay that I'm bringing that up here.
Yes.
And have just been so inspired by really stepping back and looking at the big picture. And not that a lot of higher education institutions don't do that. I mean, career services is something that's at any school, but it feels to me like there's a difference. And I watched your interview with Senator Jamie Eldridge, and you talked about how many students who come to GCC are from here, from this region, and who are staying in this region after school, which is, I think, one of the things that sets community colleges apart is that a lot of the matriculation is local, even if we're defining local as coming from
Absolutely.
Southern Vermont. Um, and
Well, we're only 10 minutes from Southern Vermont and
it's
Southern New
true.
York. So that is very local. And to your point, that's what we are getting. A lot of students are
Yeah,
saying, I see the value, I want to come here, and they are staying. Community college students are not the same students that you get who come from some other state and
right,
leave. An investment in a community college student is an investment in our local communities, and it's
right.
an investment in the state. So as we look at some of the barriers to completion for students and for community college students who are also the most economically insecure and vulnerable students, investing in them is an investment in the state. And as I mentioned to Senator Eldridge, we have 88% of our students stay right here in Franklin or Hampshire counties,
Right.
and about 95% of them stay in the Western Massachusetts region when you factor in all of the other counties of Western Mass. So to
Gosh,
me, if the state wants to make an investment, we really need to look at our community colleges because we are the major hub for economic development, working with all of our municipalities and businesses. And we're also a major hub for education. And in
yeah.
our knowledge-driven economy that Massachusetts has become, we need to make sure that all of our citizens have the skills to be able to compete in the job market.
Yeah.
And to go back to your point about equity, community colleges serve the most diverse
Yes.
group of students. So whether we are dealing with rural students, the rural poor, whether we are dealing with students of color, whether we are dealing with mothers and people who are economically disadvantaged and
Mm,
marginalized, whether we are looking at a proportion of LGBTQIA students, we serve those students at a higher proportion than
yeah.
any other higher education institution type. So it's really important that as we look at how do we invest, where do we invest,
Mm,
and how do we raise the level of human capital in different regions, that we really look at community colleges because that's where it is.
yeah. Absolutely. I so appreciate you touching on the word diversity, and expanding on it, because I feel like so much of the work that's happening right now, especially in the business community, but that's the vantage point that I'm coming from, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, these words are, it feels like we're still having to define them for people and to remind people that diversity means more than talking about students of color. It means all these different backgrounds that people are coming from and all the different situations that people are in. And you do handle such an intersection of people being in Franklin County. And I know that, you know, we've talked before about how many students do end up coming to GCC and then matriculating elsewhere, a great deal at UMass, I think, which is very close to the Mill District. And so we have a lot of interactions with UMass. And a question is coming through from Virginia, and she is sharing that she once took a Spanish class from a GCC professor, but the class was offered at Smith. And she said, do you think that there would be offerings like that in the future? Which is the question I wanted to bring up as well, which is this sort of cross-county availability of
Yes.
GCC's
Yes.
resources, because you are doing such a phenomenal job. And I know that a lot of people are traveling not only down from the north, but also from the south up to Franklin County.
Yes, yes. So actually, before we go to Virginia's question,
Yeah,
I will say that my definition of diversity also includes the neurodiverse students and students who are disabled. Those two
yes.
are two categories of students who are very important. I don't know about whether community colleges serve a higher proportion of them compared to other populations, but
Mm,
those are two populations that GCC fully
yeah,
embrace, and we support them very well. So with respect to the courses, yes, we try to go where our students are within our catchment area, and we offer classes in Northampton, and we have offered the class at Smith. We also offer classes at Smith Vocational, as well as Smith College, so that students are able to access our educational opportunities wherever they are. And
yeah,
that's what it means to be a college of the community,
yeah.
to go where we are needed. And that's why we need resources to be able to do that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate you pointing to neurodiversity and differently abled as two really important groups on the spectrum of looking at all the different ways that students, that people are approaching learning and are approaching their own lives. Do you think, you know, I would agree that it's hard to tell if community colleges are necessarily attracting more people in those groups, but do you think that there is an element of that sort of personal touch and personal connectedness, because community colleges are rooted in this idea that, you know, they're a little more, oh, I don't want to get in trouble and say things about other schools, but I think there's an element of community college, even just community being in the name, where a student might look at that and say, oh, these are people that are going to understand me. I'm going to get more personal attention. I'm going to, you know, come in contact with more people who might, you know my family or know other people I know in the community, and therefore be more open about their needs.
Yes, yes, and we see that all the time. We
Really?
have a number of our employees who are graduates and who were attracted to the
Yes.
college mission because of how, because of their own experiences, how they were treated, and how they felt like this was really a family,
Yeah.
and that we cared, and they weren't just a student ID number. And it's important to say that we have 2,200 students, which is which impacts the level of service and the level of care and the level of
Sure.
engagement that a student gets. Because when you have a large study hall with, say, 300 students, it's very different for
Yeah.
them to have that same level of care. It's very different for the faculty member to get to know that student on a personal level. So when it comes time to write letters of reference and things like that, even I write letters of reference because I've gotten to know our students so well that I
Yeah.
can vouch for them, that I can say, this is an extraordinary student who's going to do well at your university. And I know that because they've been so engaged and so involved, and here's what they've done. So it's a community where even the president gets to know students at
Yeah.
that very intimate level. So it says a lot about the care that we offer and that we coordinate things. So
Yeah.
you speak to one person in one office, in the peer tutoring office, and you speak to someone in the counseling office. And if you want them to talk to one another, because we're not going to do that without your permission, they can actually do that. So it's a small enough environment, a caring environment, that we're able to do that. And we're nestled in some beautiful mountains and at the foot of some beautiful mountains, and it's just a gorgeous campus. So for
It is.
people who have not seen our campus in person, I highly recommend a visit. And there's so much to do around where we are. The grounds are beautiful, the campus is gorgeous. So come for a visit, if nothing
Yeah.
else. And when we are open, be sure to stop by the cafeteria. We've really diversified our menu so that you can get a little bit from every culture that is represented in our campus, virtually every culture that is represented in our campus. And we're trying to be very inclusive. So not just in the way that we reach out to students, but also in the way that we make them feel like they belong. Our motto
Yeah.
is "You belong here." So we go out of our way to make sure that we live our mission and we live our motto.
Yes. Oh, this is remarkable. It's I get a little verklempt. All right, so I have I have a question from Angela Di Terlizzi, who's watching, another great friend. So she asks, what professions and classes seem to be gaining interest and enthusiasm for enrollment? What do you see really grabbing students, even maybe some
Oh.
things that surprise you?
Yeah, so the health sciences
Mm,
continue to be popular, which amazes me because you have nurses and allied health workers who are in the front lines, and they are risking their lives for the rest of us.
yeah.
And to me, that would be a little bit scary. Um, for many people, it's very inspiring. People who say, "I want to be a nurse," or "I want to get on the trajectory to become a nurse," or "I don't want to be a nurse, but I want to work in the health professions." So those are definitely increasing. We're also seeing increases in the sciences. People are interested in the sciences. Teacher education, again, surprising, right? Because teaching right now is very hard, but
Yeah.
it's inspiring people to say, "I want to be a teacher during this time." Criminal justice continues to be a field where people are very interested. Psychology, people are also very interested in that. And of course, in terms of individual courses, our foreign languages continue to be very popular.
Mm,
French, as you know, is one of my native languages, and is the most popular language on campus. Students
really?
droves for French, yeah. And Spanish is also very popular. And I attribute that to the older population that we have, the older
Mm,
adults that we have. We see that they are driving foreign language enrollments, and also the arts. The arts continue to be for us very highly rated and very highly pursued and sought after. GCC really has a niche in terms of art education, and we get recruiters from some of the best universities around the country that come every spring to interview our students. And we have extraordinary talent, and the faculty in that area are very avant-garde, very, very talented themselves, and they work in different media. And so students really appreciate that, and they come in droves for that.
that is incredible. I think it says a lot to me that students are being inspired by this time that we're going through. It says a lot to me about the sort of next generation of professionals who are looking at the challenges of today and really connecting. I can imagine that GCC itself is sort of giving off this vibe of accessibility and inclusivity that is encouraging people to think in a sense that they have a mark to make. They have the ability to change something. And that feels like a totally new way of approaching education, and really feels sort of borne out by the fact that people would go into the professions that are being the hardest hit.
Yeah, one of the things that we've made a commitment to do as part of our strategic planning, and also as who we are becoming as an institution, is to be a student-ready college.
Huh.
Usually people think, oh, you want to be a college ready student, right? You need to do everything that you need to do. But
Oh,
for us, the mentality that we've taken, the approach that we've adopted is to meet the student where they are, meet each student where they are, and to say, we understand that every student is unique, but there are some commonalities. So we will appreciate both your commonalities and your uniqueness and make sure that our college is ready to serve you no matter who you are in terms of your identity, no
right.
matter what your interests are, and how do we set up our services so that we maximize student success? How do we create the optimal learning environment for students, regardless of your age, regardless of your gender, regardless of your gender identity, regardless of your prior academic experience? How do we create that environment for you to excel? And so it's a very different approach, a very different way of looking at things, and of structuring a college and of serving students. And for us, we are in the business of serving students, of serving our community. It is service oriented. And so if we conceive of our work, our mission as being that, and also if we embrace the idea that knowledge is co-constructed, that students will have as much to teach us as we have to teach them,
Mm,
it creates a different environment, and it helps us to embrace and implement pedagogies that are student-centered and that at the end of the day help to raise the excellence among all students.
yeah, absolutely. That flipping it like that makes so much sense. And I can imagine is incredibly attractive to students. And I know that you have a lot of students who are older, but those younger generations that sometimes get a lot of flack for being very self-centered. People love to make fun of millennials, but there is a positivity to being self-focused in that way and coming into education and looking for education that works for you in exactly the way you're talking about.
Yeah, the world is changing and we
Yeah.
have to meet the diversity of students that we have. We have students who haven't been in college or been in school for 10 years. And we have those who are just coming out of school. We have students who've been homeschooled. We have students who felt like, oh, college is really not for me, or I'm so tired of schooling. We have students who've taken a gap year,
Right.
who've made us their gap year or did something else during the gap year. So wherever they are, we have to be ready to support them,
Right.
and that is our mission. And that's what wake us up in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're having, and not just an intergenerational sort of environment among your students, but I would imagine among your team as well. How do you as a leader navigate sort of intergenerational relationships with your coworkers, with students? I mean, really creating an environment where everyone feels safe and comfortable to come from where they are.
Yeah, I'm so glad you raised that actually. So the intergenerational highlight that I want to make is that we have a senior program called Oasis, and it is a volunteer-driven program that was started by folks who are retired in the community or semi-retired, who said, we really want to have some connection with the college, and they work with us to create programming that serves older adults, and they also serve as mentors for our students. So our students have someone to talk to, someone who has experience, career experience, life experience, and who also at one point was a student. So people who can say, okay, this is what you're navigating, let me help you with that. Or this was my experience. Or, okay, you're having a hard time with this. Have you sought these resources at the college?
Mm,
So it's been, and at the same time, we provide programming to help expand the intellectual curiosities of these older adults. And they are people who are totally functional, who have their total intellectual facilities and physical facilities working, but who just said, this is my time to have fun and this is my time to sit back and learn, right?
yeah.
So it's been a great community. They've done Zoom activities, and we were supposed to have an intergenerational dance before the
Oh,
pandemic. hit. Yeah, and that couldn't happen. There were a number of things that we had planned to do in person, but what we saw was that the group working with the college, we ended up turning whatever we could to an online environment, that we are doing that. So it's really
Wow.
exciting. And as far as leading multi-generational teams, I would say right now on the campus, we have 5 generations of people. We have the traditionalist, right? The silent generation. We have the baby boomers. We have the Gen Xers. I'm a Gen Xer. We have the millennials. We have Gen Z. And we also have Gen Alpha, right?
Ah,
We have fewer of the Gen Alphas, right? But they're just starting to have more college experience.
right.
And it's interesting because we had a 14-year-old student, and it's not uncommon to have 14-year-olds, 14, 13
Oh,
year olds. They're
wow.
coming, yeah, some of them come very young. And we have 15-year-olds and we have 16-year-olds. Some of these child prodigies, you meet them and you're like, oh my goodness, I
Whoa.
didn't know as much, when I was 13, 14, and I certainly couldn't undertake the rigors of higher education, a college level
Yeah.
class, but we certainly have, a few of those who are ready. And it's about adapting, right, to
Yeah.
every group. And every group is different, and every group has different orientations, different facilities with technology, different challenges and opportunities in their lives. Some may be caring for their own children, others are caring for their parents, others are caring for, we're all caring for some pets.
Yes,
I think everybody has fur babies, and
absolutely.
have different aspirations, right?
Yeah.
So it's about varying our leadership style to suit these different groups, and also realizing that people are not monolithic,
Yeah.
right? Just because you're in a group doesn't mean that you all behave the same way. Um, it's keeping an open mind to that. And I'm at the cusp, I'm at the end of the Gen X generation. So my leadership style is different.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes my authenticity and my vulnerability, people are like, whoa, I'm not used to that.
Right.
And I'm a Black woman leader immigrant in my 40s.
Yeah.
So it's very different from what we've seen before. And certainly we
Yeah.
need to adapt to what the current generation wants and is looking for. And at the same time, giving others what they need to be successful in the workplace. So it's about leading with compassion for me,
Mm,
with an open mind, and always trying to understand things from other people's perception and from their points of view,
yeah.
and understanding that I too bring my own biases to the work, and I too bring
Mm,
my own prejudices to the work. And how do I continue um, to be reflective, and to also be forgiving when I make mistakes, but to also learn from those mistakes as we make them.
yeah.
So for me, it's about that constant self-improvement and compassion and understanding. That's what, at the end of the day, leadership comes down to for me.
Yes, absolutely. I want to put a pin in that and come back to it, but you're starting to speak to a question that Cinda has. Um, she says, when you talk about being a sort of statistical anomaly, I think all the things that you just mentioned, the intersectionality of you, how does your story impact your goals of changing the world, and how has the resilience gained in your experience served your success?
Oh my gosh.
We're light
What
questions
a
in the Middle
question, Cinda.
District.
Yeah, I know.
We get in
Okay, is
there.
this woman smart or is this woman smart? Yes, I do say that I'm a statistical anomaly. And, as some folks know, my background, my PhD is in statistics, it's in measurement. And it's about looking at what are the outliers, what are these points, how do we explain these outlying points, these data points that don't fit the mold, that don't fit our model. How
Mm,
do we explain that? And for me, I very much feel myself as being a statistical anomaly. Coming to the US and living in an impoverished part of Boston, looking at where we came from, I was not supposed to have the trajectory that I have. So I feel
mhm,
very strongly about ensuring that our students have the opportunities that allow them to be statistical anomalies. And hopefully, if we create enough statistical anomalies, that will begin to be the model of success
right.
that we see emerge more and more. And that is really important, especially being in a rural area. So many of our students are so geographically disconnected. There are places where
Mm,
we don't have broadband internet, where our cell phones don't work. And I will tell you, I was in Heath on Sunday. There was no internet. My phone was not working. I got lost and I had to wait and sit in my car until some other cars passed by and wave them down and say, can you tell me where Heath Elementary School is?
oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, that's the reality. That is the reality of how things are. And I think sometimes people don't realize that,
Yeah,
especially for me, having spent over 20 years in the greater Boston area, in Boston proper, and also in the suburbs of Boston. I could never fathom that they are parts of the state of Massachusetts
right.
where your telephone doesn't work. It's sort of like, I think in all Haiti now, your phone can work, which is my birth country. So it's just, it's just odd that there are parts of the US where you don't have access to a cell phone, basic
Yeah.
technology. So yeah, I would say that that's also shaped who I am as a leader and how I lead, and being innovative, entrepreneurial, forward-looking, optimistic. All of these problem solving, I definitely attribute to um, my identity and my journey, my lived experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the point about the more we sort of pull in those outliers, we create space to see what the other outliers are, and we start to normalize a lot of the experiences like not having internet, which I do think a lot of people take for granted. And it's a very common thing, especially in Franklin County. I'm not sure how common it is in other counties, but I interact with that a lot, being on committees in Greenfield. As soon as things went on Zoom, we had quite a few people who weren't able to join in the same way, even though on the whole accessibility was talked about, like, oh, it's great when things are online, it's more accessible, this parent doesn't have to leave home at night and everything. But it created all these other issues that I think no one on the committee had known was really that common in Franklin County, and it brought a lot out. I want to go back quickly to leadership, because we've been talking so beautifully about the students and your interaction with them in the space that you create. How do you see yourself in terms of impacting leadership itself, looking at how you can help other leaders, maybe who are not Gen Xers, I'll just leave it there, see leadership in new ways, in different ways, and see themselves more as a part of the whole sometimes, and not so much the top-down leadership that I think a lot of us have gotten used to. I know you have a blog and you have other ways of reaching people, but in your day-to-day life or your interactions with other leaders, how do you approach kind of putting it out there that leadership can be done differently, can be done the way you do it and the way other young leaders in the world are doing it?
Well, I'll first start with saying leaders are not fallible, right?
Mm,
Leaders are humans. And one of the things that I try not to do is to put regular humans who are in extraordinary roles on a pedestal,
mm,
um, because
yeah.
I think that's really important. For me, I don't like to be put on a pedestal. I'm just a person who's trying to be invisible when I'm not. Seriously. And those who know me know that about me. I
Yeah.
just want to be anonymous. I just want to be anonymous, which is what I say all the time. But I think every generation and every person, every leader offers something, and offers something unique, because we each have our lived experiences. We each bring our struggles, we bring our victories, we bring our obstacles to who we are and how we lead. So there is something to be borrowed from every generation, and there is something to be celebrated and some things to mourn about every generation of leaders, every person as a leader.
Mm,
And as I look at my role, I think of the prior leaders, I think of the women, especially, who have paved my way, because the glass ceiling still exists
mm,
for women, still
yeah.
exists for people of color, and still exists for LGBTQIA people. When we look at things like gender pay disparities,
Yeah.
we see that women get paid, Black women get paid the lowest. Women are still making 82 cents to every dollar a white male makes. And I believe it's somewhere in the 56-cent range
Yeah.
for women of color compared to white males. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think as women, the more we work together to address these disparities, the more we identify not just the aggregate difference, but the individual differences based on individual groups, the more likely we are to achieve parity, to stand up for each other and to stand up with each other. I was extremely pleased to see that Kamala Harris became our vice president,
Yes.
because I can see my own daughter, if that is what she wishes to be, if that is the position she wishes to attain, if she wishes to be the president of the United States, she may also run for that job. So it's really inspiring. And for me, I look at the contributions of each group and I look at my own contribution. What do I want to impart? What do I want to learn? And what do I want to co-create together? So that's what leadership is for me. And that's how I approach it.
Yes, and it shows in everything that you do. Uh, all right, I'm gonna pull it together and pass on a couple more questions. We have a question coming through about whether or not there is a music program at GCC.
Yes, 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 yes.
Oh,
Oh, you got me all excited.
okay.
Yes. We have an excellent music program. And okay, I can't say that I have favorites, but I do like the music program very much.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, it's not our most highly enrolled program,
Okay.
but I have to say it is a matter of social justice for me,
Oh,
because it is important that students in our area, that students in our part of the state, that students in our rural area have access to music and have access to these other fields and disciplines that really trigger your multiple intelligences. So as we make difficult decisions,
mhm.
one has to say, do we lead with our values? Do we lead with justice and equity in mind? What do our students need and deserve? And what is part of our mission? What is our mission? And sometimes, those decisions have to be made based on those characteristics rather than nickel and diming.
Right.
But yeah, we have an excellent program. We have a contemporary music program
Ooh.
that is led by Matthew Shippey, and we also offer individual classes. Also, if people want to take a one-on-one course, we offer violin, we offer piano, we offer a host
Wow.
of courses. But it's great. I'm very, very proud. They are so talented. They work so hard, our musicians. And if you go to YouTube and you look for Greenfield Community College Music Department, you will find samples of our music students' work. You'll find some wonderful selections, from
Awesome.
voice to acoustics to just a whole range that's on our YouTube page. So please check it out.
That is fantastic. And I will definitely link to that on this video so folks can
Oh,
find it
thank you.
easily. And another question about kind of what is open on the campus if folks have not been to the campus before and want to visit, is now a good time, or would it be better to wait a few more weeks?
So we have a virtual tour that is also
Ooh,
available online. So you can see the virtual tour. But if you just want to drive, it's a wonderful 3/4 of a mile drive. Is it 3/4 of a mile? No, it's not that long. Maybe a half a mile
mhm.
drive onto campus. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And when
Right.
it snows, it's beautiful. During all of the season, it's beautiful. If you have a dog, it's great to let them run in the snow on campus. The campus is technically open from 6 a.m. until 11 p.m. every day. So for folks who just want to go and check it out, it's a gorgeous campus. But if you want to actually physically visit the inside of the campus, you'll have to wait until we are reopen. And while we are mostly remote, some of our programs have limited face-to-face interactions, and that is limited to our health sciences programs. And soon, when the weather gets better, we may consider having some of our art programs on the ground, and
Oh.
also socially distanced labs. Yeah, it's a wonderful course. It's a wonderful campus, and you'll fall in love. I guarantee it.
It really is amazing. You hosted a conference, I think it was a couple of years ago now, with Green and Greenfield, wonderful conference on sustainability in Franklin County and beyond. And it was my first trip to the campus, and I was so blown away. And I think everything you're talking about, the sort of different approaches, the creativity, it kind of emanates from the campus. I mean, the physical space, you can feel that things are happening in new ways. I know that sounds a little new agey, but it really was true. I was blown away driving up that very long drive and seeing that first building.
Yeah, and if I may pull a plug, since you remind me of
Please.
conference, we are having a Black History Month remote conference that is supposed to take place, I believe it's February 22nd. And it is going to be phenomenal. We're going to put all the information out. I think it's going out on all of our social media platforms today. And
Right.
it's about embracing our legacy to create a better future. And it is a multi-industry, multi-generational, multiracial conference,
Wow.
because we realize that it takes all of us to make change happen.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear some compelling stories from our panelists. I highly, highly recommend it. So if folks want to zoom in, go to the GCC Facebook website. We'll have more information there. I'm also accessible via social media. I'll be on my social media platforms as Prez Yves, Prezyves, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and GCC Greenfield, or Greenfield Community College, you can also find on social media. So please, we hope you'll be able to attend the conference. It's going to be exceptional.
Yes. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad we remembered that. That's so perfect. And we'll share it on our Mill District social media as well, so that
Thank
folks
you.
have an easy time finding it. And I hope a lot of people come to that. It is going to be incredible. Eve, thank you. Just, I can't thank you enough for giving me a full hour, for coming on here, and for the way that you lead and the mark that you're making. It's really so unique and so needed in the world. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Hannah. This was wonderful. Great
I
to be
hope
with you.
have
All
a
right.
great rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care.